The oceans of the Fallout universe are a mystery in themselves, with the only times we've been given the chance to venture off the coast, being the Far Harbor DLC and the first Fallout's endgame mission where you travel to the Enclave oil rig. With the oceans so vast, known to many as the final frontier, we know more about the galaxy around us than the depths of Earth's waters. So today we are going to explore the biggest ocean mysteries of Fallout. 1. Where is the fishing? Where are the fish coming from? And could there be clear waters off the coast? With 70% of our planet covered by the ocean and only 80% of that uncharted, we still do not know what waits down there to be discovered. And throughout the Fallout series, we are introduced to many fishing operations, indicating that life still exists in the waters off the coast. But we are never shown ships that could be delivering shipments of fish to the shore. The only ships we see that are still in operation are not used for this purpose. If you dive into the waters, you'll find that they're heavily irradiated. This is due to the fact that groundwater is considered the hidden connection between the land and the ocean. Over time, the groundwater would pull radiation from the soil to the ocean and further contaminate its waters. This explains why entering the ocean without protection will still irradiate you, despite 200 years having passed since the bombs stopped. That isn't all, as any chemicals left over from pre-war civilizations would wash into the oceans over time and kill off all marine life. The Monongahela River is a prime example of this, as the waterways surrounding Pittsburgh become so heavily irradiated that despite being safe to cross further down its flow in 2104 at the time of Fallout 76, during the events of the Pit DLC of Fallout 3 that takes place in 2277, the waters are impossible to cross as they are far too irradiated and polluted. Eating fish from these waters would almost certainly be poisonous for anyone that isn't a ghoul. The regional maps for the first two games depict that there is a bright green area of radiation surrounding the shore, but outside of that it seems to show clear water. With the canon of certain depictions in those games being challenged by minor retcons, each installment, could this be proof that there is far less radiation in the waters outside the coast? And could the fish we see all throughout the series be breeding there before venturing to the coast? We see the byproduct of fishing operations all over, so they have to be coming from somewhere. Is there a chance that survivors could be venturing into the oceans to fish before returning to the shore? We don't know where these fish are coming from, but we do know that there is a distinct lack of fishing vessels. Could origins of what fish we do find be from a mysterious underwater civilization that could destroy the surface world at any time? 2. Entity in the depths. Could there be eldritch horrors just below the waters? This mystery began with the release of Fallout 3, where we are introduced to a mysterious pre-war cult existing in the Point Lookout National Park, where bombs never fell, the area bordered by the Atlantic Ocean. We only meet one member of this cult, Obadiah Blackhall, who tasks the player with finding his book, the Krivbekni, and guides you to a site where swamp folk conduct ritualistic sacrifice. During this quest, you will meet a Christian missionary by the name of Marcella, who claims that Obadiah plans to use the Krivbekni to control the swamp folk, a tribe of hostile inbred mutants who may have been that way long before the war. Arriving at the ritual site, after killing the swamp folk, you will find the Krivbekni in the middle of a shrine littered with gore. Returning to Marcella, you'll find her dead, having been attacked by smugglers hired by Obadiah. She, however, left a holotape with instructions on how to destroy the Krivbekni. You will have to travel back to DC, to the Dunwich building, where you'll make your way to its basement, known as the Virulent Underchambers. There you'll find a feral ghoul who stands by a note that reads, sharp knife to send him to a deep temple. Flay and say my words. Abdul comes again on the Feast of the Weaker, feast for the deep temple, born again, here. Alhazared Gieth. Nearby is the obelisk of Ugqualtoth. If you activate it, the book, and all nearby feral ghouls will burst into flames. The questline is over and answers are never fully given. In Fallout 4, there is a mystifying location known as Dunwich Borers, owned by the same company as the Dunwich building from Fallout 3, which is a pre-war marble quarry with a dark twist. You will have to fight your way through raiders to get inside, but inside you will find clues that it might not be your average marble quarry. The raiders were there to collect scrap metal, but the underlings began to complain to their bosses that the place was haunted. Clearing out the raiders, you'll start to have visions of cult rituals. These will continue until you enter the last room of the quarry, where you'll be granted a vision of a pre-war sacrificial ritual involving a strange blade known as Kremv's Tooth. From there, you can swim into an underwater chamber where you will come face to face with a colossal statue of immense size. The next step of this mystery takes us to Fallout 76, where there are 3 locations that each bear scenes of ritualistic sacrifice and have those colossal heads hidden within. The first location is Tanagra Town, which is an entire city lifted out of the ground and into the air by all-consuming vines that have started to take over the minds of the various denizens of the wastelands. These vines are even capable of taking over ghouls and Grafton monsters, transforming them into their Strangler variants. The second location is Organ Cave, which is home to a large group of Mothman cultists who have been making sacrifices to their god in this cave. The same head from Dunwich Borers can be found embedded in one of the walls of the cave. The cave is also home to a large source of water. The last of the three is in the same room of an ancient entity that the cult of the Mothman is making sacrifices to, and it seems to be healing. With the release of the Gone Fishin' expansion, there is now a basket of fish offerings to the entity. This creature is alive and will bleed if damaged, but does not react. This creature is known as Interloper, and its body is entirely plant-like, with root-like appendages, a human-like torso, and limbs that appear like arms. This creature is not alone, as there is another that can be found near White Springs in a cave known as the Deep. This one is in a dormant state and will not bleed, being seemingly inactive. There may be more colossal heads and ancient entities hidden in the oceans of the world, as every location they appear in contains water. With the Gone Fishin' update, a captain by the name of Raymond Clark and a strange humanoid creature known as the Fisherman, who appears similar to a lake lurk from Fallout New Vegas. Raymond Clark will try to reveal more about the Fisherman, pointing towards a sinister secret held by it, but before he can speak up, he is met with a jolt of pain and will only speak good of the creature after. The Fisherman is constantly processing fish and acquires the player's help in obtaining more. Next to him can be found a note with a depiction of a creature that is nearly identical to the Interloper. Raymond Clark claims that he and the Fisherman are from the East. But considering that he is a ship captain, could he have been enthralled by the Fisherman in the ocean and forced to obey his commands? Could the Fisherman be a servant of an ancient entity that's seeking to consume all life on Earth? This whole mystery is very similar to the H.P. Lovecraft novel The Shadow over Innsmouth, which depicts a backwater town on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in Massachusetts. The locals of Innsmouth are known for having the Innsmouth look, and it's later revealed that the population has been breeding with a humanoid frog-like fish species known as the Deep Ones in exchange for gold and an extended lifespan for their youth, forming a cult around them. The Deep Ones live in an advanced civilization beneath the Atlantic Ocean, and were stated to be so powerful that they could topple humanity entirely if they wanted to. To appease the Deep Ones, the people of Innsmouth would make offerings of beads and human sacrifices, after which the Deep Ones would reward the locals with golden jewelry of alien design and a plentiful harvest of fish. As this trade continued, each generation began to look more and more fishy as they aged. At old age, they would descend into the ocean to join the Deep Ones. This seems to parallel the strange appearance of the swamp folk from the Point Lookout DLC, while the Deep Ones themselves are supposed to look a lot like what the Fisherman looks like. So, could he be a Deep One human hybrid at the advanced stages of its lifespan, or could he be a Deep One himself? Though we never see signs of this eldritch civilization, we can find signs that something more human could be going on beneath the waters of the Commonwealth. 3. Underwater structure. In the Commonwealth wasteland of Fallout 4, you can find plenty of mysteries hidden in the waters off the coast, including massive pipelines leading to a convergence point that stretches across the waters along the map. These pipelines originally would have led to a piece of cut content. Vault 120, a completely submerged vault. The questline that would have taken you there, 20 leagues under the sea, was cut during its final stages. The vault would have had a unique overseer that was a sentient giant squid. You would have entered the vault alongside Captain Zhao of the Yangtze 31, a barely functional Chinese nuclear submarine now stuck in the shallow waters just northeast of the 4-lead fish packing plant. During the story, you would have discovered that the vault dwellers had rebelled against the sentient giant squid, but not much else is known. What we do know is that practically everything related to Vault 120 was scrubbed from the game, so why are the pipes still clearly visible in-game? Could they have decided to scrap the entire thing in exchange for a potential new enemy that might make an appearance in later games? Could that be the source of the Commonwealth Brotherhood struggles that was mentioned by Scribe Harkness in the Amazon TV show? Who knows? But what we can conclude is that those pipes were left there for a reason. What that reason is, we'll have to wait and see. Though this might be explored in a later installment of the series, this next one is so strange that it may never be explored further, only added to with weird and humorous locations. 4. Cove Mannequins. Just off the coast south of Haddock Cove, you can find the underwater wreckage of a pre-war cargo ship that contains several mannequins in various different poses. Some of them are even armed with weapons, and those that do have the now skeletal remains of the former crew scattered around them. Right away, it brings into question what exactly happened here, as none of these mannequins should have stayed in place once the ship sunk. We have some answers, but it only leads to further questions. You can find a note written by the captain, titled "These Mannequins," floating inside the boat's cabin next to one of the armed mannequins. It reads, "I can't wait to drop these damn mannequins off. The crew is starting to claim that they are hearing weird noises from the cargo. Maybe they are just playing pranks on me. Whatever. We are almost there." Judging by the skeletal remains nearby, it's clear that the captain should have investigated the crew's concerns. There are no clear answers, as mannequins are inanimate objects and should not be able to harm anyone. What we do know is that the Institute had only just begun the brain scanning program that would lead to the creation of the synths, like Nick and Dima, so they could not have been synths. Many have theorized that the mannequins could have been possessed by some eldritch entity, maybe even Ugg-Qualtoth itself, and used them as puppets to massacre the crew as a sacrifice. If this is true, the threat Ugg-Qualtoth poses could be greater than anyone predicted. There are no survivors to recount what occurred on this vessel, but this is not true for every encounter of the unknown in the waters of the post-nuclear wasteland. 5. Leviathans of the Deep. Could there be massive leviathans lurking in the deep, destroying vessels? And that is why global trade is off limits? Throughout real-world history, explorers would often mark maps with depictions of strange and massive creations. These creatures would act as a warning to others. Do not go here because there be monsters. In the Fallout universe, we are not so lucky, as the Pip-Boy can provide no warning for what we may encounter. Wastelanders are no strangers to massive aquatic beasts, with Mirelurk queens towering over most structures. With armor thicker than power armor, they can take down even super mutant behemoths. Could there be more such creatures lurking deeper in the waters that have grown larger than we could ever imagine due to radiation? In a terminal entry found at the Nahant Oceanological Society in Fallout 4, we can find evidence that with minor radiation before the war, marine crustaceans began to grow into the Mirelurks we know today, with the entry saying that there is an increase in average mass by 14% in crabs and 12% in lobsters. And that was before the war, with 200 years having passed between now and then. There is no telling how large some marine life could have mutated. Throughout Fallout 4 and 76, we can find the skeletal remains of whales. But in Fallout 4, when walking through Bunker Hill, you can overhear two caravan guards having a conversation about an encounter that one of the guards' grandfather had with a truly massive blue ghoul whale, known by the older Wastelanders as Olpeg, though this could have been the Yangtze 31. A seasoned Wastelander would know otherwise. The guard would then go on to say that if the other guard does not believe them, that they can ask any of the old folk about the gigantic monsters that can be found in the deep. While walking the coast in Fallout 4 and 76, it's not uncommon to come across the remains of both small fish and larger marine life, including large mutated dolphins known to Wastelanders as dollfish. We may never know the truth behind the legend of Olpeg, but what we do know is that it wasn't the only deep-sea leviathan within the oceans of Fallout, as the previously mentioned giant squid overseer would have been something truly terrifying to behold. The FEV contaminating the groundwaters across the wasteland would have flowed into the ocean in isolated quantities over time. So with this, we can question what monsters might be out there. I'm sure I speak for us all when I say that it would be amazing to battle against an underwater giant and truly test ourselves against the unknown. Whether we ever will, well, that's a story for another day. 6. Undetonated warheads. Could there be 2 undetonated nuclear warheads just off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, waiting to go off, which would devastate its waters? If that happened, it would destroy whatever semblance of an ecosystem that has managed to survive, which allowed the fishing we see in Fallout 3, 4, and 76. In the Atlantic City expansion for Fallout 76, Veracio Cruz is a member of the Showmen, a faction of performers who control the Atlantic City boardwalk as well as the Aquarium of the Atlantic. He runs the Most Sensational game, which gives contestants the opportunity to become its champion if they can survive a brutal blood sport where they'll be pitted against abominations and other contestants as they battle their way to the end. It's a reference to The Most Dangerous Game, a novel written by Richard Connell in 1924. Talking to Veracio Cruz, he will say, "They say it was not our enemies that irradiated these waters, but ourselves, that a transport aircraft suffered an engine failure and was forced to jettison its precious cargo into the waiting depths off this very coast." He goes on to say that nobody really knows if they detonated far below the surface or if they still lay there on the ocean floor, waiting for the day when they finally crack open and release their payload. This seems to be a reference to a real-world event that happened way back in 1957, when a C-124 Globemaster transport aircraft for the United States Air Force had to shut down 2 of its engines. and return to Atlantic City, though it would jettison 3 nuclear bombs and 1 nuclear core into the ocean before doing so. The 3 nuclear bombs lacked their cores, so they were labeled as not a threat. What exactly happened remains a highly classified secret and has never been divulged, but the bombs and nuclear core were never located. But in the Fallout series, it seems as though the ones that had been dropped were indeed armed and could explode at any minute if they haven't already. And if they do, will it be the doom of all those who survive off the fish caught from the Atlantic Ocean? Enclave Oil Rig, FEV. After the destruction of the Enclave Oil Rig in Fallout 2, we are left with the assumption that all the FEV that the Enclave had been testing on and left behind on the oil rig had been destroyed. But what if it hadn't? The oil rig was the Enclave's main command site from the months before the war until it was destroyed in 2241. It was constructed by Poseidon Energy and built over an underwater oil deposit in the Pacific Ocean, 175 miles off the coast of California. The Sierra Depot of the Galaxy News Network reported that it was built over the last remaining uncapped oil reserve, which China previously had a claim to. However, the Chinese had their oil platform project sabotaged, allowing the United States to seize the reserve for themselves. This is one of the primary sparks that ignited the Great War and led to the events that destroyed the pre-war world. Little did China know, they could have taken out most of the upper echelons of the United States government with one well-placed missile on the structure. Not having done this allowed the Enclave to thrive once everyone else had been annihilated due to the nuclear fallout. There, the Enclave would test the effects of FEV until they had finally perfected FEV Curling 13, which, if exposed to the wasteland, would have caused a genocide so great that only Vault inhabitants and the Enclave could have survived. But with the Enclave having left the FEV behind during their evacuation of the oil rig, wouldn't it have gone into the ocean when the oil rig exploded and its ruins collapsed into the waters? If so, it could have led to the birth of an untold number of horrific abominations that could be festering off the coast of California. There is also the chance that FEV Curling 13 could have survived in the oceans and could be the reason why we see the decaying remains of so many fish, whales, and dollfish along the coast. If it's affecting marine life, could it reach the land and begin to kill off the mutated populations of the world? We can only wait to see what happens, as this extinction level event would change the game series forever. 8. What lies beyond? Though we have never been shown much of what lies beyond the coast of the United States wasteland, we do know that there are at least pockets of survivors out there that have made it to the United States. Many of you might know of Alistair Tenpenny from Fallout 3, who is the owner and proprietor of Tenpenny Tower. But did you know that he hails from the post-nuclear wastelands of Great Britain? He crossed the ocean to seek fortune in the capital wasteland, but he will not mention anything about his life before arriving in the United States. However, searching Tenpenny Tower for any lead as to what has become of life overseas is not a dead end. There is another traveler from a foreign land living there, and that's Irving Cheng, who claims to be a direct descendant of the chairman of the People's Republic of China, who was their leader until at least 2077. Irving writes in his computer terminal that his father was one of the leading officers in the Chinese army, which indicates that some form of the Chinese Communist Party still survives there. As to how either of them arrived in the United States is unknown, but in Fallout 4, there is another clue. While traveling through the Commonwealth, you can come across the wreck of the FMS Northern Star, a pre-war cargo ship. Climbing aboard this wreckage, you will encounter raiders who will shout in Norwegian as they try to stop your approach. Though the sole survivor does not speak Norwegian, their lines can be translated to, "Leave us alone, get off our ship, what do you want from us?" And even, "I'm coming home," as they're dying. There are no ways to effectively communicate with them, so you can either leave them alone or wipe them out entirely. We don't know for sure when they arrived and are led to believe that they became stranded after the bombs dropped, as they are all ghouls. But what if they arrived far later and became ghouls during whatever catastrophic event that led to their ship crashing into the coast of Boston? Could Norway still have a shipping industry that operates throughout Europe and maintain a sort of loose supply network in order to stabilize the European wasteland? I for one hope we get answers, as the outside world is a gray area in the Fallout lore and it would be fantastic to travel overseas, or perhaps they could make a game that takes place in an entirely new nation to explore. The oceans have always been a resource that has led to the survival of nations throughout human history, that has continued to provide food, water, and trade. All of that betters the livelihoods of those affected by it. But what would happen if we suddenly lost our ability to traverse the waters? Everything would collapse and society would once more be rendered into tribes of hunter-gatherers, as we see in the more landlocked regions of the Fallout series. This has been Fallout's biggest ocean mysteries explained. If you want to see Fallout 4's most disturbing mysteries explained, click the video on the screen.